Welcome to the first episode of STEM in Stilettos with your host, Zofia Morales. That would be me. And we have an amazing guest with us today, and we are going to discuss glass ceilings, busting them, and how you can make your life and your business better for recognizing these, structures that are invisible around us and continue to hold us back. I will be discussing this with our guest, Latha Jay, who I will introduce in just a moment. But before I do that, I would like to introduce you to yourself a little bit. We have a quiz that I've put together. It is called the Leadership Pitfall Quiz, and it will identify the number one aspect of your leadership style that is holding you back. You can find that quiz at leadershippitfallquiz.com. It takes about 60 seconds to do, and we will be discussing some of these leadership pitfalls, specifically the ones that our guest occasionally has been known to struggle with. So I will swing on over here to introducing Latha. Latha Jay is a spiritual manifestation coach, and she blends modern knowledge with traditional wisdom. She integrates what she's learned through her life experiences, working in different healing modalities and different industries, to teach people how to shift their perceptions, how to manifest, and how to live happier lives. She's passionate about guiding clients through mindset modifications to transform their lives to a new experience of happiness, freedom, and love. When she's not working with clients, writing, or spending time with her family, or building courses, Latha spends her days learning from others, farming, and persistently maintaining a beginner's mindset in everything. Welcome, Latha. I'm so happy to have you here with us today.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have this conversation. When it came to me to take this pivot out of the strictly spiritual and back more towards my roots in the corporate, in the entrepreneurial world, I was super stoked to be able to bring in some people that I know have experience in both of those worlds, because I have found it's kind of important to have both. But you can function perfectly well in the world if you don't have both. So if you're like, I don't know about this spiritual manifestation stuff, you know what? There is practical advice here too that has nothing to do with whether that resonates with you or not. So I would encourage you to hang with us because we will be bringing the practical and pragmatic as well as the mystical to bear, and probably more of the first two and just a hint of the last. So, Latha, tell us a little bit about your own, business and entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, sure. Right now, I run my own business as a spiritual manifestation coach, in which I coach people in improving their lives in a really dynamic way so that they can continuously have success in all areas, right? We don't just necessarily focus on one area. A lot of times people will come seek me out for help in their love life or help, monetarily, they want to make more money kind of thing. Those are probably the two biggest.
Right.
But the most part, it's never just those areas, right? A lot of times when we're having an issue in one area of our life, there's issues throughout that maybe we're just disregarding, and we just see the flame coming from this one. Like, that's what
this is the burning issue right here.
Right. No, we hear the smoke alarm going off, so we try to look for the fire, and that seems like the biggest fire at that time. But really, in truth, there's always like something else going on that's deeper. So I work with people and really trying to uncover those. And I've been running my business now for just about 15 years, which is a decent amount of time. Getting to work with thousands of different clients all around the world has been just really such a huge blessing. But before I actually got into coaching, I went to school to become a doctor. I went to medical school. I did pre-medicine as my undergraduate. I studied psychology and biology. I got a master's in and also an Ayurvedic science and integrative medicine. My life in academia is extensive prior to me, stepping into coaching. And then in between, I also had a corporate life, as you had kind of briefly mentioned, in which I was working in tech and I was working, a 6-figure job in New York City, just doing it, and even though it wasn't my necessarily soul calling, I still went through the motions of it.
I would like to challenge that, because oftentimes we get really narrow in our definition of soul calling, and there are no wasted experiences.
No, definitely not a wasted experience, not at all. But I knew it wasn't the end goal for me,
Yeah.
stay in corporate America, but I valued my time in corporate America. I enjoyed it. I loved the people that we met. I loved the experiences and the challenges that came forth from it. And it's all added in to really like mold me into being who I am today. So I'm very, very grateful for it. I agree with you. No experience is wasted. Even when I look back in my life and I say, oh, well, I went 8 years of college and university to become a doctor and I didn't become a doctor. I'm not an MD, I
I I did the same thing actually. In fact, I was on track to land a fellowship into med school. But then life intervened with that, said, no, no, you're not doing that. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's really weird the paths that take us where we're going. So tell us a little bit about what you were doing in the corporate world. You mentioned IT.
Yeah, I worked in IT and I worked in a hedge hunting company. I think it was a head hunting company in which
Headhunting, yes.
we would place C level executives into like corporations and things like that. I didn't have anything to do with any of that. I was working on the tech side of things in the back end, assisting with the documentation and things like that. Like it wasn't, I had no say in who was going to be selected or whatever. It was a really interesting environment getting to work very closely with people in the C-suite, getting to work very closely with developers and people, inside of tech. And it was a whole new experience. And just really understanding the way that corporations work, the way that a business environment works, all of that, it was completely new to me. And it was such a refreshing pleasure to really be able to access it coming from a medical background where things are quite different.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But not completely divorced. I've got to say, my time that I spent in science, getting ready for pre-med and then getting a degree in what they nowadays call biophysics. It wasn't called that when I was studying it, but um, I found I used a lot of what I learned in my corporate career in terms of like troubleshooting and finding the source of problems and that sort of thing, that it responds well to the scientific method, I have to say.
Mhm.
So in in corporate, I know we're both passionate about what I want to say, being able to expand your horizons, to expand your scope of influence. And I know there is this concept of this thing called the glass ceiling. Tell me a little bit about your early experience with that and how that has shifted over the years.
Oh, absolutely. I think that the glass ceiling is not as mythical as people think it is. I think that it does exist. And I don't think that necessarily it is the end all be all. It's made of glass, it's not made of steel. you know.
True,
So
true.
there
And it may not be easily visible, but you can identify it once you realize that it's there. And I love that there are things that you can do about it. One of the things I've noticed about the quote unquote glass ceiling is so often we look at our circumstances around us and go, well, it's because of that guy over there or this process here that it's keeping me down and it's keeping me small. But one of the things I notice in myself and then eventually in clients and coworkers was that the glass ceiling to a certain extent gets internalized, especially in women, because we're not nurtured the same way that the guys are, right? You just play with your dolls and be quiet and polite and wait for permission and don't put yourself forward. There are these lessons that we learn as little girls to survive that don't serve us when we get into the corporate world. Um, what has been your experience around that? How much of the glass ceiling is out there and how much of it is between our ears?
I would say 50-50.
Really?
Let me say, I would say 40 is in existence. I'd say 60 is internalized because a lot of times we are the one that creates, our own limitations. So when we think like, oh my God, they're never going to hire me because I'm a girl, or, for me, a big conversation for a long time that I had to do a lot of work around was, oh, they never would want to work with me because I'm brown, 'cause
Mm,
it's not gonna they want the white guy. And that was the internal conversation, right? Not to offend anybody, but that was really what was going on for me inside. And I had to do a lot of work around that. And that's actually one of the things that shifted for me when I was able to do that work and I realized how profound doing the work was, right?
right.
I knew that I was really good at supporting people in doing that work to shift their mindset, to shift their mental paradigm, so that then they could go and break through that glass ceiling, so that they could get the job promotion, so that they could move into the new neighborhood, so that they could do the things that they actually wanted to do. And it kind of like shifted my whole life from
Yeah.
really point.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the thing I want to mention and bring forward around this whole glass ceiling versus what I would call a sticky floor issue, which is not my term. There's some other job coach out there who coined that phrase, whose name escapes me right now, but I will disavow any kind of authorship on that. But the concept stuck with me because there are a lot of instances in which we tend to go, oh, it's a glass ceiling, when in fact it is a sticky floor. There are some statistics as I was researching my pivot. There are statistics that show that women, for example, will wait until they're almost 100% qualified for a position to apply for it. And, you know, the way I was raised, that's how you're supposed to do it. But if you look at the playing field, the guys do not wait for that. Okay, so now we're getting into pay gap territory here. The guys don't wait to be 100% qualified. They go, 50% is good enough. And a lot of times they'll get it and they'll just figure it out on the fly. Well, that's not a systemic problem. It can kind of look like one when you stand back from it. But when you zero in on the behaviors and the permissions going on within the minds of both of these people, they're very different. And it puts the women at a disadvantage having that, well, I got to be 100% prepared mentality, or I have to earn a pay increase before I ask for it. You know, we tend to have this wallflower Cinderella mentality that's kind of been baked into us where, and I'm completely guilty of this. So don't think I'm throwing stones. And my house is not completely made out of glass, because it is. But yeah, there's this, I'm just grateful to be chosen, right? Someone noticed me and made me a job offer, and I wouldn't want them to take it back by doing anything like asking for a market level salary on the way in.
Also, I hear a lot of, we want to reject ourselves before anyone else can reject us. So like job, we don't want to go for it until we know that we have a high likelihood of getting it. Rather, someone else might say, oh, 50%, who cares? I'm going to apply for it. Let them reject me, right? But
Yeah,
we want to be in the space of almost like hedging our bets for ourselves, say, okay, we're not ready yet. We don't want that rejection, rather than going
yeah.
for it.
Well, and I can appreciate the desire to cushion the emotional blow, but here I'm going to hold up a little mirror here for anybody who's thought that. A lot of people who are hiring for positions want to know you can grow into that position. And if you come in 100% qualified, they're scared you're going to leave straight away. So they're not going to offer it to you because you are now overqualified, because you match 100% of what they're looking for. Ooh, ow. Ooh, unintended consequence. Ah. So, how do we begin to shift some of this stuff? We've talked about some of the things that come up and some of the things that can happen to us. How do we start to shift some of this mentality? Because that little brain in the back of my head that goes, you're not quite there, you're not quite good enough, you're not ready to do that. It can be very persistent, and it's been with me for a long time.
So I think the thing that really, where we have to start, is understanding what it is that's holding us back. And that takes a little bit of time to be retrospective in our lives, because that idea of not going for it, or wanting to, just pause or be okay with where we are, or not being ready yet, comes from something else. It's never from that moment as an adult, right? A lot
Right.
of things that limit us come from our childhood. It might have been some time that, you went for something and you weren't ready for it as a kid, maybe a presentation or something like that. And then you were scolded by your teacher or your parent when you got home, or someone,
Right. Or embarrassed in front of the class. Yeah.
and the kids laughed at you. And then that leaves a mark within us, right?
Oh,
And that's
yeah.
a limiting belief that then we carry into our adulthood. And then it shows up in these ways of, not going for that promotion, staying small, not speaking up for ourselves. And it's rooted, the root of it is like 35 years ago. It's like, wow.
Yeah, when you were 5 years old in kindergarten. Yeah, yeah, and what kind of questions would you suggest asking yourself to kind of begin to mine out the root of, well, why don't I feel like I can ask for that raise? Why don't I feel like I can, put myself in the queue for that promotion?
Yeah, I think it can be very extensive. So I'll just say, even just to start is a big step in the right direction. Really, I would say to start with asking yourself, what does it mean to be worthy? Right?
Mm,
What does it mean for you to be able to apply for this position? Why do you feel that you're not qualified for the position? But really just getting it all out on paper, just being able to see it. Sometimes we think it's much bigger than it is, but when we create it, when we write it down pen to paper, we just see like, oh wait, it's these three things and I am qualified. Like you can just it's easier to see, easier to vet out once it's out of your head. But when we're
right.
onto it with almost shame and guilt without looking at it for what it seems like a monster. It seems overwhelming. It seems unattainable, untamable, really.
Yeah. I know one of the questions that at least I, as a listener out here listening to this conversation, would have kind of bopping around my head is this. How do I know when it's a glass ceiling? And how do I know when it's legitimately a sticky floor and something that I have the potential to directly influence?
I think the big thing here is to see like, are there other people that are past that point? Then you know it's not a glass ceiling, right? And then you know that it's something more internal. Now, if everybody in that same, profession is at the same, mark, regardless of their age, gender, race, anything like that, then you can say like, oh, well, then maybe there's something here. But if you see someone else past that, then you know that that doesn't exist.
Okay. And when you say someone else, you mean someone else who kind of fits your, what I want to say, external characteristics
Yeah,
that are
the
being
job,
presented, female, gender, color, whatever it is.
job title, also like in that space, in the company, anything like that.
Beautiful. So we are coming up on our first break here already. And I would like to invite the listeners, remind you actually, get your pen, get your piece of paper, and take a couple of minutes over the break here and go to leadershippitfallquiz.com and find out what your number one leadership pitfall is. And rejoin us after the break because we're going to dig in that a little bit with Latha after the break and see what advice she has for people who are struggling for her type, because we all have a type, and we will find out Lathan's after the break. So hang with us. We'll be right back.
Oh, shout it loud, the world here. Tech is ours and we show no fear. No fear. No fear. No fear.
Thanks for hanging in with us through the break. This is Zofia Morales, and I'm back with Latha Jay, and we have been discussing glass ceilings as well as sticky floors and what you can do if you find yourself in a situation where something is holding you back and you need to figure out what the heck it is so that you can get your career on the track that you desire it to be on. So, Latha, I know you took the Leadership Pitfall quiz. What was your leadership animal that came forward?
So I'm a Renegade Rhino. Also, the quiz was super easy to take. It was just took me like a couple of minutes. It was great.
Excellent. So that's at leadershippitfallquiz.com. If you did not get a chance to take that yet, here's your opportunity to go out there at leadershippitfallquiz.com. So the Renegade Rhino is usually someone who's done fairly well in the corporate world. Renegade Rhinos tend to do well in the bureaucracy, and they tend to know how to kind of cut through things. They tend to have a very clear vision of what it is that they want to do, but they also tend to kind of ride roughshod over other people, especially when they've got someone that they feel like is kind of holding that back the train of progress. One of the other pitfalls that the Rhino can have is a lot of times they're not very patient with planning. If I have a direction, by God, I'm going there. And so it's not uncommon to get out there on a branch that they're sawing off on the wrong end because it hasn't been completely completely thought through. So how does that resonate with your experience?
I think most of it is pretty accurate. I would say that I sometimes can be a bold risk taker when I see an opportunity, definitely stepping forward and going for it. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So how have you dealt with the moments where the rushing into the bold opportunity has been kind of like the dog that catches the fly finally? It's like, holy crap, now what do I do?
Yeah, there's been many times of that, but I think that really making a decision is better than making no decision, and making no decision is making a decision, right?
Hello.
Choosing to stay stuck is making a decision very clearly. So sometimes I really do feel that taking that bold step and making that change or the move or the choice is progress regardless. If it was a lesson that I had to learn, like, that's okay. You learn the lesson and then you can make a better choice, right? And
Yeah.
you're a little bit wiser, you're a little bit more educated for your next step.
Yeah. So as a renegade rhino, have you managed a team previously and how did that go for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I manage a team now in my own business. I have a team of almost 25 people that work for me full time, and it's a lot. you know, the experience for having, my corporate background and, working in all of the different experiences that I've had throughout my life have led me to this point to be a really, I would say, I would hope that they would describe me as, a generous and, you know, bold leader, if anything, because like we'll make choices and we'll make things that have to pivot. And my whole team is aware of this. And some of these people have been with me for 2, 3 years at this point, and it's been a ride.
Yeah.
you know? Um, and I really do enjoy just being able to lead people in a way that is coordinated and that we all have this really great experience of communication.
Yeah. How do you deal with concerns from your team when they come up? Because I'm sure there are moments.
Yeah, concerns do come up, absolutely. And I always just ask them to trust me. And I do hear people out, right? If someone on my team, someone on my staff comes to me and says like, this is not going to work out, or I have a lot of doubts about this, and, has a lot of like information around it. It's not just them saying like, I don't know about this. I don't think it's going to work. But it's like, I don't know about this. I'm not sure because of this, this, and this. They bring 5 factual things, that I can actually look over. I'll take time to look into it, right? It's
Yeah.
not it's not decision making that is rash and uneducated or unthought out,
Right.
but it's a bold decision sometimes. And that doesn't mean that it's coming, without the thought, without the work.
Right. Yeah. I like that. I like that. And if you are also a renegade rhino type who's had trouble in the past receiving input, what would be your advice to your fellow rhinos?
I don't necessarily think that rhinos are meant to not lead. Let me say
No,
that.
I am not saying that. It's a perfectly valid leadership type.
So I think that, if you find yourself to be a renegade rhino, you want to put yourself in more leadership roles, and you might have
Mhm.
more success there than if you're in more of a led role,
Right. Or a solo producer kind of role.
right? But when
Yeah.
you're leading a team, you're going to find a lot of success because there's so much that comes from the support of a team, from people being able to work together, and that pushes you along the way. It really it reminds you of your drive, if
Yeah.
I'm having a bad day and I'm like, I don't know about this. I remember everybody on my staff and I'm like, I have to wake up today, because it's not only my staff that I think about, it's like all of their children and their families and everything. If I want to sleep in for the week, well, guess what? My company's not making the money. How am I going to feed these people? How are they going to feed their children, kind of thing? How am I going to pay these people?
Yeah.
Always like a motivation for me to keep going and continuing to go and produce and be creative and think of new ways to be expansive and serve others.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is uh, that you keep your people as much in your mind as your own goals and objectives, um, so that they feel like they're listened to, they feel like they're taken care of, and that in turn builds that trust and confidence that allows them to go, yeah, she's a bold risk taker, and I love it.
Yes, absolutely. And then also just to make everybody feel safe to come up with an idea and share it with me, right? Because
Yeah.
I come up with a lot of ideas, but I don't come up with all of them. And I depend on my team to have creative solutions to problems that we're facing or to have new ideas that are expansive for our company. Like that all really matters.
Yeah. And so the other thing I'm hearing is you don't shoot the messenger when they come in with the 5 things that they're concerned about.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. So back to the whole glass ceiling, sticky floor thing. What recommendations do you have for somebody who's kind of looked around and went, you know what, there are lots of people who are advancing, but not people who look like me? What do you recommend for somebody in that space? Because I know sometimes management will hire on a quote unquote diversity hire in order to change a brosif kind of culture that they have going on. Um, and if you find yourself in that space and it's not fitting you well, what do you recommend?
Well, sometimes it's not about the physical ways that you have in common with other people, but what other characteristics do you have in common with the other people around you, right? Do you have, are you tenacious like the people around you? Are you, well versed in this education of whatever your company is working on, the industry that you're in? Look at all of those things because a lot of times it goes past just your physical appearance. And I know we can get caught up on it because that's what we see front
Yeah.
facing. So don't let that hold you back because a lot of times that gets in our way of our own mental paradigm saying, I don't look like them. They're not going to accept me. Rather
Yeah.
than I am like them because I'm tenacious and I am a great leader and I have an amazing education and da, 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 right? Like just
Yeah. And I know my shit cold.
yes,
Yes.
your true value makes such a difference.
Yeah. I love that. Love that. I know that can be a real challenge for women. How do we start to own our value? Because I mentioned that little voice, and I know mine in the past has been hypercritical, you know? It's like, yeah, I probably know my shit cold. If some other third person would go, "Oh yeah, she's crushing it." And my little voice inside is like, "Yeah, but you didn't get that little detail right," or whatever the thing was, right? It's always nitpicking. How do you start to undo that sort of a cycle so you can really start to own your own value?
Yeah, so that's actually called imposter syndrome. When we feel like an imposter going into a situation or that we're not qualified when really we might be, right? A lot of that really we can start to shift that with doing the internal work that I was talking about earlier, right? With I'm a big believer in shadow work because I know the shifts that it's had in my life and the shifts that it's had in other people's lives. And when I say shadow work, it's not something very esoteric at all. It's
Yeah, I
really
was gonna say, explain what shadow work is,
so
because if you haven't been like speaking therapy speak.
yeah. So in previously, it might have been called inner child work or wounded child work or literally journal prompts. I mean,
Mhm.
it's all essentially saying the same thing, but I know that right now, and my last book I wrote about, it was written in the space of the verbiage of shadow work. So that's what I'm using. But it's answering those questions, right? To just give us some deeper insight. And what's really cool about this is that when you're answering a question, you might not have the answer immediately but a little doorway opens for you and there's a little more light that's shown in there. You keep doing work and something else opens for you and something else opens for you. And then all of a sudden you're realizing, wow, I'm really shifting because you're having this vision into who you are, into your past experiences, and you're being able to see it without that space of shame, right?
Mm.
A lot of times I encourage, and I've always encouraged people to approach shadow work or inner child work or journal prompts or anything, whatever you want to call it, with a space of curiosity. Because truly, when we're curious and when we're in a space of curiosity, we're not in the space of judgment. And
Yes.
that's things. At
Yes,
least,
I'm a recovering judger, and I can attest that curiosity is always the thing that moves me out of it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's so powerful to continue that work and to continue keep going. Right. And it's also to be very compassionate with yourself because sometimes when we're answering these questions, we might not like the answers that are coming up. We
Oh, amen.
might feel shameful because it's coming from that shameful place, or guilty about it. Like, oh my God, I would limit myself because of this, or, it there's
Right, or because this thing happened to me, a lot of times we'll take on shame that's not even ours.
right. And
Yeah.
start pushing ourselves rather than being in that space. I always encourage people to approach this with a lot of compassion and curiosity and gentleness and a lot of self-love in that space too.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. Oh, wow. It can be really intense to go those places. Is this something that we need to spend like hours a day writing about, or how can we approach this in a way that fits in our lives?
You can spend hours a day writing about it. I don't, but if that's good for you, go for it. I will say that to the most part, a lot of my clients will spend a certain amount of time a week, or they might do like one or two questions a day kind of thing, just to continue that kind of routine that keeps going. Maybe it's like after you brush your teeth in the morning, you answer two questions, and it
Right.
just gets you kind of thinking, and it allows just like a little bit of opening for you in that space to get your day going. But it's really up to you. Some people will just sit down on a Friday night with a cup of tea and answer 5 questions or 6 questions or whatever it is. And it's totally up to you how you want to do that. But I actually host a really incredible group coaching program. And every week, I send you new shadow work questions to work on. And they're on a variation of topics, but they largely apply to everybody. Recently, we've been talking a lot about burnout because I've
Mm,
noticed really struggling with that after the holidays and everything like that, dealing with work and job and kids and whatever else is going
right.
on.
And then trying to be the hostess with the mostess and make the perfect Christmas for your children. And yeah. Mhm.
Still showing up and being social and everything. I just noticed a lot of my clients were feeling that deep sense of burnout. So we started really like working on that and answering more questions about that. But I mean, like you can create shadow work questions and answer questions around any area of your life, around the space of feeling like an imposter in your own industry, around the space of feeling worthy, of feeling loved or lovable.
Give us an example of a shadow work question.
Sure. Oh my gosh, I have tons of shadow work questions. Give me one sec.
Let's make it around the career space.
Around career space. Okay. Well, let's
Yes.
talk about, well, a lot of that comes from limiting beliefs. Okay. So I do have some shadow work questions here that I just recently wrote. So we can kind of talk about that if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So around limiting beliefs, shadow work questions. These questions are really meant to help you to uncover the root of a limiting belief and then to give you some guidance on providing a pathway towards releasing it and possibly replacing it with a perspective that's more empowering.
Yes.
Well, here's one of the questions. What reoccurring negative thoughts or beliefs about myself do I notice when there might and where might they have originated from?
Mm. It's,
Reoccurring,
it's a it's a two-parter.
yes. So, what reoccurring negative thoughts or beliefs about myself do I notice and where might they have originated from? So, you would answer that question in whatever way, felt comfortable. The second question after that is, how have these limiting beliefs influenced my decisions, actions, or relationships in my life? So now that question really helps us to kind of identify patterns that might be coming up for us and just to see, what's really there? Where have I seen this before? Where
Right.
has it occurred in my life previously? I've got a couple more. Do you want me to go through them
Yeah,
or?
sure. Go for it. I love the first two. And I guess the thing I want to say around the first one is if you haven't been observing your thoughts, if this is a new concept to you, it's not like you have to answer this right now. You can have a little notebook that you carry around in your pocket, or you can put a note on your phone when you get that negative voice coming up that's like, oh, they don't want to hear this idea, right? Or whatever that thought is. And just kind of, oh, well, there it is. Write it down.
Sure.
And you'll start to accumulate quite the interesting list.
Yeah, and that's really interesting that you were saying that because let me just read the third question to you guys. It's
Sure.
evidence do I have that contradicts these beliefs? And why might I struggle to embrace that evidence? So it's contradicting that limiting belief that's coming up. So exactly how you were saying to really make a note when you notice it coming up, also to notice when you're contradicting it, when you're not in that space of being a limiting, when you are doing things, when there's evidence that you are a superstar, right? Really be
Yes.
note that is so important.
Yeah. I think the other thing to mention about the superstar, right? Because I don't know about you, but I was raised with this idea that I should be superwoman, go have the career and the fabulous man and the kids and bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan and Anjali and the whole business. Um, but the truth of the matter is, we're we're more of one than the other, right? A lot of times there are certain aspects of ourselves that are more fabulous than other aspects of ourselves, and that's okay. You don't have to be superstar in all of the areas. Just accept the areas in which you are superstar.
I mean, also, I think
It's okay.
you can redefine what it means to be a superstar. Superstar
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean 100% in every area, but it means that you're doing your best and you're putting your best forward, whatever that looks like for you.
I love that. I love that. So you said there were 4 areas?
4
What?
areas.
Well, we had discussed noting your repeating cycles. Oh gosh, my brain has turned to Swiss cheese.
How we were talking about the different areas to
Yes.
identify your life and look. We were mentioning the physical, the mental, the spiritual, and the work related, or the
Okay.
career areas.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so we are coming up on our second break. I would invite you to pick one of those questions to just start with quickly over the break. You don't have to complete an answer. I just want you to start, because a journey of a million miles starts with one step. And so here's your opportunity to take one step while we're listening to the sponsors of our fine show. And so remind us of that first question, because you said it so nicely.
Sure. So, what reoccurring negative thoughts or beliefs about myself do I notice, and where might they have originated?
Love that. So spend a little time with that question over the break and hang with us. We'll be right back.
Oh, check it loud, the world here. Tech is ours and we show no fear. No fear. No fear. No fear.
Welcome back from the break. We missed you while you were gone, and we're so glad you stayed with us. So I hope you had a nice little start on answering that question about where you see these recurring negative thoughts. And it gives you kind of a stepping off point to start identifying some of these sticky floor things that may be coming up for you. So talk to us a little bit, Latha, about your own journey. What was kind of the first limiting belief pattern that you took on?
Oh my gosh, I had so many.
That's why I asked about the first one.
One of the biggest ones, and I've shared this before, so I can definitely share it with you guys, was that my voice didn't matter and that I shouldn't speak up for myself.
Oh my.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, boy, that is a limiter, huh?
And how it showed up in my life was just like not really taking that step, not being the bold renegade rhino, not being the person that would ask for the promotion or ask the cute guy out, or being able to really like make moves in my life. And I found my life to be very plateauing to a sense. And it wasn't until I had really uncovered the root of where that came from. And it actually came from my childhood, in which I think I was about 10 years old and I was in choir and I really wanted to be a singer. And one day in choir practice, my choir teacher actually called me down from the bleachers and
Uh-oh.
said, "Hey, you have a terrible voice.
Ah,
Sing. You probably shouldn't even speak," like making a joke kind of out of it.
whoa.
The 40 plus kids on the bleachers were just roaring in uproarious laughter. And I was just like,
Oh my God. Not only did she say it, but she said it in front of everybody.
everybody. And I could have just crumbled into, I could have spontaneously combusted at that point. I was so embarrassed.
Well,
And
and talk about taking the joy out of the thing. Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, that was the last day I ever, was in choir. But the thing was, like, I carried that idea from that teacher for so many years, for decades. This was extending into my 20s. And the thing is, now when I look back upon it, I'm so grateful that I was able to do the shadow work and to uncover that. Because if you know anything about me now, I make videos online teaching people about this, where I come to podcasts and do summits and do public speaking and everything like that. I use my voice every single day. I've written books that have impacted millions of people. And the thing is, that's my voice. And sometimes what is our limiting belief is just trying to suppress our brightest light.
Oh, isn't that something? Yeah, that's one of the things I've noticed is the thing you most want is behind that door labeled fear.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the best thing you can do for yourself and your dreams is to turn around and face whatever that is. And I promise you, it's not as big and scary as you think it is,
Yeah.
because we do know how to build it up in our minds. That's for sure. That is for sure. So, how did you start down that road? What was the thing that kind of pushed you to take that one on? Because that's a big one.
Yeah, I mean, I just noticed that my life wasn't going the way that I wanted to go. I had desires for things to really shift in my life, but nothing was really shifting. And it wasn't until I was really uncovering all of these things about me that I even noticed that there was a missing. Like, why wasn't I? When there was an opportunity for a job promotion or anything like that, and that voice came up like, "Oh, don't apply for it. You're not going to get it. Don't apply for it. Don't speak up," kind of thing. I'd be like, What is that?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
Wait a
actually,
second.
yeah, like hear it and be like, "Wait, what? Why don't I
This
want it?"
is like diametrically opposed to what I say that I want. Yeah.
My So where's that fear coming from? And it was really in that investigation of fear that these things kind of opened up for me, that I was able to see like, oh wait, this goes far back, not it's not what's happening now as me as a young woman. This is happening as a child that was, in a space of wanting to protect themselves. So I had created this belief that, I shouldn't speak up, because if I don't speak up, I won't get hurt, and
Yes.
for so long, but it was no longer serving me in that way. And
Yeah.
I
Well, and the interesting thing is you weren't being hurt in an immediate sense, right? There's no immediate rejection. Okay. But you are being hurt in a broader sense, in that you're not getting the things that you want out of this world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the interesting thing about that internal voice. It has a tendency to be a little misguided in the ways that it's trying to keep you safe. I know
Yeah.
when I started working with my internal voice, um, I found that curiosity again, like you mentioned, curiosity can open the door. I started to get curious about why it was doing the things it was doing in the way it was doing it, because it was really hurtful. I would never talk to another person the way that voice spoke to me. Never. And the curiosity was the thing that allowed that door to crack open, because up to that point it was kind of hostility to the voice, and hostility never solves anything.
Mhm.
Um, and so getting curious about the voice and why it's there and why it's doing what it's doing and having that conversation with it was really enlightening to me. And I know there are probably people out there going, okay, she's ready for the rubber room. It's like, no, you can talk to yourself and not be crazy. Okay.
Introspection, it's not
Yeah.
like there's many varieties of talking to yourself. Wanting to say that, but it's really like what we're talking about is being introspective and reflecting on your life, on the things that have happened, on your past, on maybe why you think a certain way. And I think that that can be so beneficial, because a lot of times we just kind of go through life thinking that's how it is. I shouldn't speak up. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And it's only until we stop and we look into it that we can actually shift that.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So tell us a little bit about how the listeners might be able to engage with you. If they're finding what you're telling them intriguing, what are some of the options for getting in touch with you? I know we've got some stuff in the liner notes, your social media links, that kind of thing. But what do you have coming up that's a little more structured?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love for you guys to reach out to me at my website. It's www.lathajay.com. That's LATHAJAY.com. And of course, you can find me on social media: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
At, at, at least as of January 13th, 2025, you
Yeah,
can find her on TikTok.
where TikTok's going to go. But at the time this is published, it might not be in existence. Anyway, but you can find me on all the social medias and everything like that. And I do offer some really incredible programs, and I have an amazing group coaching program. It's actually called Journey, because I actually heard you say this before. Every journey starts with, every 1,000-step journey starts with one step. And and I just really do feel very called to that. I've been running it now for 4 years. It's an incredible program. And we have such amazing results. Then, like I said, We send out shadow work questions every single week so people can continue that growth at their own pace. We're not grading it or anything, right? But it's like it's there for you, and it's an opportunity for you to just kind of investigate into your life and continue to look. And I also offer mentorship programs, which is just it's a smaller group. And then of course one-on-one coaching as well. And I'm, always available to kind of have conversations with people. You can always reach out to me on social media as well.
Yeah. I know a lot of times as an entrepreneur, we get very focused on our particular goal, whatever it is, get that minimum viable product out there, get the money from the investor, do the thing. And we tend to go, okay, I'll deal with all the rest of this crap later. In your experience as an entrepreneur, is it good to put off your personal development for later?
No.
What happens when you do that, Latha?
Well, the thing is, when we're not it's not taking care of our own needs, right? You can only go so far. If you think about it, think of it like a car. If I only fill a car up with a gallon of gas, I can only go whatever that gallon of gas will take me. Rather than if I'm, really creating a path forward and I know where the next gas station is and I know I need gas to get to that space, doing that self-work, doing that self-development is you making that path, that plan for you to move forward. And it's vital. I don't think it's optional. It's really vital, especially for the women that want to get further in their lives, right? That don't want to just continue to necessarily be at the same level that they currently are, that they'll want to go for that job promotion and might really want to create that life in which they have it all.
Right. Or start that entrepreneurial journey, right?
Right.
I know that naively, when I became an entrepreneur, I thought, it's all about the business. I need to just get my business ducks in a row. And the truth of the matter is that it only really moves forward when I'm doing my own work at the same time.
Absolutely.
My personal development work.
Yeah, our outside world is a reflection of our inside, right? And how we are really relating to ourselves is how we show up in the world. And I mean, if you really think of it in more practical terms, let me say, it's like the thoughts that we think mold and create our beliefs. And then our beliefs create our action. And our actions is how we appear and show up in the world, right? And what we're doing and who we are. So it really starts from that thought. So shifting your mental paradigm is the beginning of really everything.
The foundation. I love that. That is amazing. So what would be your number one piece of advice for a woman who's in that stuck place that by God, I'm busted out?
The number one thing that I would say to someone that's feeling stuck is to give. And I know this might sound strange, but really sometimes when we're stuck, it's because we're really in the space of being very self-absorbed, and that feels stuck. So when we give in the space of volunteering our time or our money or our effort or looking into another problem that maybe someone else is having, it shifts things for us and it makes us have a moment to step away from our own issue and just to see things broader. And sometimes there's a lot of clarity that can come through and a lot of unstuckness that can happen in that space.
Yeah, I love that. It puts you in a different perspective than you were in previously. And a lot of times, what I want to say, gives you more space to see your own forest instead of just the trees. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. So, what would be your biggest takeaway from your own personal journey in business and self-development so far?
I have learned that people are a vital part of this journey. Your community, your coworkers, your network is so important. It's really, there's a saying that it's like birds of a feather flock together, or you are the sum total of the 5 people around you. I'm sure you've heard these sayings. It's true. It's true.
It really is.
Time and time again, it's become so true and so vivid in my own life. It's like who we surround ourselves with, and maybe not even in physical, proximity, but who we are in regular communication with, who we are exchanging ideas with matters. So I would encourage listeners to really make sure that your circle that you are surrounding yourself with on a regular basis is those top tier people, is those people that are pushing you and challenging you to grow and be better and expand yourself in more ways.
I like that. I think what I'd like to kind of throw in there, or the question I'd like to ask around that, right? Because some of us, there are, what do I want to say, non-optional people who are in our lives, okay? there are relatives, there are bosses that perhaps we did not necessarily choose. How do we start to counterbalance some of these influences that we didn't choose with something different? And do you have to change out 100%?
Yeah, I think that you have to set boundaries in your life, right? If there's people that every time you hang out with them, they are just a negative energy suck, well, then there's a shift that has to happen that you can spend a little less time with those people and maybe a little more time with the people that are, really fulfilling you and serving you in a way that is positive for you in your life.
Yeah. I think there's kind of a myth going around that you have to have 100% positivity, which is actually sort of dysfunctional as well. Um, I like that answer because you can, what do I want to say, set an emotional boundary. Okay. If there's a toxic relationship at work that you can't avoid, you can at least prepare yourself going into that with, okay, I'm not going to take this personally. The stuff that's coming from this person is not personal. And kind of set your own mind frame as you're going in there instead of allowing their condition to affect yours, if that makes sense. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Right. Here's an example from my own life. When my father came to live with me, when he couldn't live on his own anymore, he'd previously been a guest in my house as opposed to a resident in my house. And when I would serve him a meal as a guest in my house, he would be very appreciative and compliments and all this kind of thing. But something clicked when he became a resident of the house, and it was my duty to provide that meal. And he never had a single good thing to say about it. And the shift I had to make around that was to stop asking what he thought of the food and just ask him, did you get enough? Okay, so that's an example of a boundary you can set. And so hopefully that will help you with your own particular situation so that you can get the space that you need to keep that healthy mind frame instead of going to bed and crying because dad didn't like the meal. Thank you so much for joining us today, Latha. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Do you have any final parting words of wisdom?
Well, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I just want to encourage people to really be able to do that internal work and feel empowered. I know that the large viewership of this podcast are going to be women and people that are in, CEOs and corporations, let me say, that are working up. I just want you to know that you can make a difference and that, just continue to work towards it, work towards your goals, and don't let anything externally stop you. As long as you're doing the internal work, you can't.
I love that. I think the other thing that I'd like to kind of wrap with is a lot of times things that we are quote unquote ashamed of, the skeleton in the closet. A lot of times what you need to do is just lean into it. Open the door on that closet, bring that skeleton out and let it dance. And that releases a ton of the shame around it, and no one can use it to manipulate you once you've completely owned it. So I would say lean in to that thing that you believe you are ashamed of, because it's not nearly as shameful as you think it is. And go out, make some bold moves, make a difference, and we'll see you back here next week, same time.